Hey, good morning, everybody. It's June 27th, and we're talking to you today about what's going on in Edmonton's real estate market. And I find this quite interesting. We had to kind of take a double check and look. Taking a look at the active listings right now, they're identical to what they were last week, literally identical in Edmonton. And then in St. Albert, we have a little bit more listings that have come up on the market. And in Sherwood Park, we have a little bit less. Spruce Grove, we have also a little bit less, but everyone is about less than 10, with the exception of St. Albert going up about 11. So, again, nothing too crazy in terms of the listings coming on the market. What that means for you as a seller, there's still a really good opportunity to move because this is, in theory, a seller's market. However, if you take a look at the market, if you look at the fact that the market is slow, that's not really a seller's market. So, what's going on? So, as a buyer, buyers are quite hesitant because of the interest rates, because of the payments they're going to be paying. And though there's not a whole lot to look at, they're just slower to move. And they are being picky. Now, I don't necessarily think that being picky is the right solution for a buyer because if the buyers are being picky, they may be waiting a very long time for something that doesn't exist. There are sellers that are still hoping and praying that they're going to get last year's pricing, which we all know is not going to happen. You will get last year's pricing, all right. You're going to get last half of the year pricing, not the first half of last year's pricing. Most sellers are becoming more realistic with this and understand that they need to make those adjustments. Now, we're seeing that if the market value is right here and you're pricing slightly above it or even at market value, you're not going to get that activity like you would have last year. You need to be pricing under, and sometimes even under isn't enough. So it depends on the neighborhood you're in, depends on the house and the condition and everything. But the active listings right now, as you see, it is very much looks like on paper a seller's market. But when you take a look at the sales, it'll show you another story. So here, pending sales in Edmonton this last week, we had less sales come through last week than we did the week before. St. Albert, again, less, 14 at 25. Sherwood Park, less. And Spruce Grove, slightly a little bit more for deals under contract in this last week. So we are starting to see a downward trend. I am not surprised. It's the end of June. It's probably continued to go downwards. We saw a little small influx a couple weeks ago, I think, because there's a lot of people just trying to buy and get in those rate holds. So that being said, those rate holds are going to expire here probably in the next 30 to 60 days. Before it really starts to crunch down. And so I suspect in September, it's really going to slow down a lot. So if you are thinking of selling, you're really going to want to sell sooner than later because you're going to miss out on that pocket of buyers who does have that interest rate hold before it went up a couple weeks ago. Now, if you take a look at the sold in the last 7 days, you'll see that we had a little bit more in the last week in Edmonton, in St. Albert, in Sherwood Park, and in Spruce Grove. Everything was a little bit higher. Sold are basically anything that was under contract, and then the conditions got removed. So this is all in part of deals that were written in the last week or two, because sometimes conditions are 1 to 2 weeks. Some of these solds could be unconditional, where people put an offer with no conditions. I am not seeing that as much this year. Again, depends on the neighborhood and the home and how it's priced. Because if the home is priced aggressively, it's definitely still going to move very quickly. Now, if we look at last year's stats, you can look at Edmonton, and we still sold more last year at this time. And last year at this time, it was really slow. It had slowed down significantly, but it was still seeing more sales than we did right now this last week. Same thing as St. Albert. St. Albert was also higher in sales. Now they're smaller, they don't have as many sales, so it's not going to have a big differential like Edmonton. But you'll see that they still did more last year. In Spruce Grove, they also did slightly more. Now this one's not really significant. Spruce Grove is identical, and Sherwood Park is very similar, and St. Albert. So those three areas are doing quite similar to last year, but Edmonton is not. Edmonton is bigger. We have a lot more product. We have a lot of new build product that's competing. There's new build product that's listed on MLS, and then there's new build product, a lot of it not listed on MLS. So that also impacts sales as well. Last year, we saw such high prices, and they kept escalating. And this year, we're seeing it more stabilized. They're being a little bit, they were kind of like, okay, I'll negotiate, I'll give you some promotions. And they're like, wait a minute, we're going to take that back. We don't want to give you too much. And now they're back to, hey, we're going to give you some incentives. So make sure you take a look at like just different builders and whatnot. I've got a question from Sean. And if you have questions, please comment and I'll be happy to answer you live. Any analysis of how the next year market will be like? And if it's going to be an investment property, how hot the rental market is now? Okay, I'm going to answer your first question first. The analysis of how next year's market will be, spoiler alert, I don't have a crystal ball. However, my speculation is that it's going to be very similar. Edmonton in general has always only increased by 1 to 2%. And that is why our market is affordable compared to across Canada. We don't wait 5 minutes and have a $10,000, $20,000 equity increase. Even 5 years, sometimes you can't even get the increase that you want to see. So I think next year's market, I'm hoping we'll have a more stabilized, like more sales happening and hopefully some more listings coming up because there's not a whole lot of choices. We like to see that active listings around 3,500 to 4,000, I think is a more healthy, balanced market. I guess that's a little bit more buyers as soon as you get over 4,000. Again, it depends on sales because even though the numbers right now are looking like seller's market, there's not enough sales. If it's going to be an investment property, how is that? I'm assuming, so clarify if I'm wrong, I'm assuming you're asking how the investment property is going to look next year. So like I mentioned, the equity value isn't going to change significantly year over year. The rental market does seem to be quite busy because a lot of people can't afford to move anymore, but there's a lot of people trying to get out of the rentals because the rental market pricing is continuing to rise and it's really expensive. And in Edmonton, your rental rate about $1,600 to $1,800, and some of them moving to $2,000. It is still closer to just buy a house. The biggest dilemma for most people is going to be their down payment. They have the monthly payments, but they don't have the down payment. And there are options, and people may not know that you can access different sources for your down payment to get out of these because the rental market, as it continues to climb up, if you're ever looking to exit the rental market, it's going to be really difficult because you're pretty much paying a mortgage. And you're paying your landlord's mortgage. So I don't know if I answered your question, Sean, but in terms of next year, I think the rental market's always tied to the housing market, right? Because if people can't find a house or they just get discouraged, they're just going to keep on renting. So then the demand is higher. There's more people wanting to rent because they're not finding houses to buy. So this has been great. I'm glad that we had someone ask a question. If you are watching this, make sure to tune in live next week, same time, same place, and we'll be able to answer your questions live. And I hope you have a great day and enjoy that weather outside that we're having in Edmonton right now.